Just over a year ago, I stood before you as your new intentional interim minister. Sometimes it's hard to believe it's been a year. At other times, it's hard to believe it's only been a year. Well, in the beginning, I tried to prepare you for the changes that would come about during an interim period. And we talked about the Israelites crossing the Red Sea, leaving Egypt for a new adventure in the wilderness and on to the promised land. We talked about how they had to wander for a while in that wilderness for 40 years before they could arrive at their sought-after destination. Hopefully, I also promised you that it would not take 40 years to find your new settled senior minister. Well, at that time, we talked a little bit about the fact that change can be hard, and how sometimes, as they were wandering in circles in the wilderness, they actually wanted to go back. They thought it would be easier to go backwards to what the King James Version so evocatively calls the flesh pots of Egypt than to move forward to that promised but unseen land of milk and honey. And we have gone through some hard changes in our last year. We've lost some key staff. Key staff we weren't even anticipating losing as the year began, including Reverend Elizabeth and our youth leader, Annie Tarter, among others. And we brought on some new staff, including our new pastoral part-time ministry associate, Avina Ward. It's our liturgist for today. And yes, thank you. Avina's doing a great job. And our new family ministries coordinator, the Reverend Pam Fine, who's also doing a wonderful job overseeing our family ministries team, and new volunteers, like our youth leader, Denise Denniston, with whom I went along with 3 of our youth to Oaks Park yesterday and had a wonderful time. And to be honest, with all of these changes in staff and otherwise, at times, I don't know about you, but it's been a little head spinning. We might get one newsletter out and already it's out of date. And we have to update you on new changes. Well, this anniversary of sorts got me thinking about change in general and how some of us love it and some of us hate it. So what about you? Are you a change embracer or a change resistor? You know, are you one of those folks that just has to rearrange your furniture every year? Or do you avoid change like the plague? So how about it? How many of you think that you all have a pretty high change tolerance? You enjoy change. It's vitalizing for you. Raise your hands. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, great. How many of you really just want stability and rootedness and really don't like change? All right. Thank you for engaging in that little unscientific poll. So if you map the trajectory of your life, you might find out whether you're more of a change embracer or a change resistor. Thinking about things like how many places you've lived, how many jobs you've had, how many spouses or partners you've loved. So when I look at my life and my trajectory, it's pretty obvious I have a high change tolerance. It's probably why I can tolerate being an interim minister. And I don't remember how old I was. I think I was in high school when I first heard the term change agent. And I thought, I want to be one of those. Because, at that time I thought change agents were people who were out there righting wrongs and fighting for equality. And in my romantic, youthful imagination, shaking up staid old institutions and changing the world. Change agents were the wave of the future, and I was going to ride that wave. Jacob was a change agent, though not exactly the kind I wanted to be. And he didn't just wait for the wave to form, he made the waves. It was in his nature. Born as twin to Esau, he came out grasping Esau's heel, which is how he got his name. The one who takes by the heel, or the one who supplants. And supplant, he did. He first cheated his brother out of his birthright for a pot of stew. Then he tricked his blind father into getting Esau's older son's blessing. Then he had to hightail it out of the country when Esau found out. And he crossed the Jabbok River, which appeared, remember in today's story, he crossed that Jabbok River into foreign territory, where he went on to amass a great fortune. He was a clever one, this Jacob. As the great biblical storyteller Frederick Buechner wrote, he outdid his double-crossing father-in-law, Laban, by conning him out of most of his livestock, and later on, when Laban was looking the other way, by sneaking off, not only with both the man's daughters, but just about everything else that wasn't nailed down, including his household gods. That's an interesting story. Jacob was never satisfied. He wanted the moon, and if he managed to go Kevin out of that, he would have been back the next morning for the stars to go with it. And this Jacob, he was smart. When he decided it was time to go home, he knew he was going to have to face his brother Esau, who had been perfectly clear about his intentions to kill Jacob if he ever set foot on home ground again. And sure enough, on his way back, he received word that Esau was coming to meet him. And not exactly with a friendly welcoming party. No, he had 400 men with him, which in the Old Testament was a number that roughly meant your own private militia or a raiding party. This was not necessarily going to be a friendly reception. So Jacob learns, change maker that he is, that change can bring serious risk, even risk of death. And so as he prepares to cross back over that boundary, that Jabbok River boundary between foreign territory and Canaan, his homeland, he quite naturally gets scared. And he tries to do everything he can to control the outcome. Did you notice that? He's really good at that. So he separates his vast company into two units so that if Esau attacks one, maybe the other will escape. And then he sends forth in front of him not one, not two, but 3 droves of animals, which in that time represented the wealth of a person. Cattle, and camels, and goats, and all kinds of animals, 550 animals in all. And he's trying, of course, to butter his brother up, trying to literally buy or bribe his forgiveness, or at the very least, his life. So, as as he is engaging in all of this strategy, he sends at the very end his wives and his children ahead of him. But for some reason, we don't know why, he camps alone on the near side of the Jabbok River. And on this particular night, Jacob learns something very important. He learns that there's a difference between change and transformation. Up until now, he has been the change master. But on this night, he confronts something new. A genuine experience of unsought after, divinely wrought human transformation. Frederick Buechner, in his masterful retelling of this story, tries to invite us in a really sensory way to the experience of this story. And so he imagines that Jacob initially thinks he's wrestling with an ancient river spirit or demon. And in fact, scholars think this is a very old story, a story with layers. And in the beginning, maybe it was a river spirit. Or others think maybe in the beginning it was understood as Esau himself coming and having a mano sort of confrontation with Jacob. But ultimately, in the collective wisdom of the people of Israel as they reflect on and wrestle with this story over years, they come to the understanding that this is a different kind of being, that this in fact is God that confronts Jacob on this fateful night. And so let me share with you Buechner's evocative retelling of this event. It was not Esau. I did not know who it was. I did not know who I was. I only knew my terror, and that it was dark as death. I knew only that what the stranger wanted was my life. For the rest of the night, we battled in the reeds with the Jabbok roaring down through the gorge above us. Each time I thought I was lost, I escaped somehow. There were moments when I thought I was prevailing. Then he was at me with new fury. But he did not prevail. For hours it went on that way. Our bodies were slippery with mud. We were panting like beasts. We couldn't see each other. We spoke no words. I didn't know why we were fighting. It was like fighting in a dream. He outweighed me. He out-wrestled me, but he did not overpower me. He did not overpower me until the moment came to overpower me. And when the moment came, I knew he could have made it come whenever he wanted. I knew that all through the night he had been waiting for that moment. He had his knee under my hip. The rest of his weight was on top of my hip. And then the moment came. And he gave a fierce downward thrust. And I felt a fierce pain. It was less a pain I felt than a pain I saw. I saw it as light. I saw the pain as a dazzling bird shape of light. The pain's beak impaled me with light. It blinded me with the light of its wings. I knew I was crippled and done for. I could do nothing. I could do nothing but cling now. I clung for dear life. I clung for dear death. My arms pressed him, locked him. And for the first time, he spoke. He said, "Let me go." The Words were more breath than sound. They scalded my neck where his mouth was touching. He said, "Let me go, for the day is breaking." And only then did I see it. The first faint shudder of light behind those farthest hills. And I said, "I will not let you go. I will not let you go unless you bless me." And he said, "Who are you?" My name tasted of mud when I spoke it. "Jacob," I said. "My name is Jacob." "It is Jacob no longer," he said. "Now you are Israel. You have wrestled with God and with men, and you have prevailed." That is the meaning of the name Israel. I was no longer Jacob. I was no longer myself. Israel was who I was. The stranger had said it. I tried to say it the way he said it. Yisrael. I tried to say the new name I was to the new self I was. I could not see him. He was too close to me. I could see only the curve of his shoulders around me. I saw the first glimmer of dawn on his shoulders like a wound. Like all good stories, this story doesn't just teach us something. It embodies it. It makes us feel it. It makes us smell and sense the lesson it wants us to impart. So that in the end, when we hear that Jacob is limping away from this death match, just as the sun rises on a new day, we feel it in our bones. We feel that he is marked permanently, that he has changed, and a change he did not seek, but that brought with it a strange blessing. This story is about the journey to authentic transformation. A transformation that includes our own agency, but is more than it. It's a transformation that, in the end, is what we most need. In his book, Transforming Congregational Culture, Anthony Robinson talks about why people come to church. Why do people come to church now? In our secular, spiritual, but not religious age, especially in the Pacific Northwest. It's no longer for these same old reasons it was for our parents' generation. It's not for status, respectability, networking for that job. It's not about being an upstanding citizen. It's not just about perpetuating old values and cultures and traditions. Now, he says, now it's often because people face a crisis or something in their lives that they realize they can't or don't want to face alone. They realize they need a community around them. They need a God within them. They need help. And they come to church. They're hungry. They're thirsty. They're looking for not just change, not just something they can do on their own, but for transformation. And Robinson says the path of transformation is the path of surrender. Freedom is found by letting go. Jacob finally learned how to surrender, how to let go, not just how to grasp. And in the process, he gained himself and a new name. In our time of great transition and change, not just in our church, but in our wider society and world, I wonder, what do we need to surrender? What do you need to surrender? What do we need to surrender as a congregation? And what blessing do we crave? And finally, what is it that's worth wrestling for? The great Genesis scholar Terence Fredenheim says, struggles like this struggle of Jacob's could be viewed as a divine initiation process in human becoming, as God's way of shaping and sharpening us for the deep challenges we face in the world. At the moment of deepest vulnerability for Jacob, God entered into the very depths of his struggle. Here's the takeaway. In this wrestling match, God literally binds God's self to Jacob, so that in the fulfillment of God's promises to Jacob, Jacob will know going forward from this place that God will be with him. All he needs to do is feel that pain in his thigh and walk a few steps to remember. He prevails, but he is transformed. But going forward, the wounded healer, we might say that he is, he does not go alone. And so as we go forward as individuals and as a congregation into this new year, let us remember God has bound God's self to us as a congregation and as people. That God is always at our side, that we will be marked by our struggles as Jacob was, but with God's help, we will prevail.